The Central Bank of Nigeria Monetary Policy Committee has raised the interest rate by 50 basis points from 26.25% to 26.75%. At the conclusion of the 296th MPC meeting of the Apex Bank, which was held here in Abuja, Olayemi Cardoso, the governor of the CBN, made this announcement. Additionally, the MPC set the cash reserve ratio for commercial banks at 14% and for deposit money banks at 45%.
Decisions of the MPC. The committee's decisions are as follows. 1. Raise the MPR by 50 basis points to 27.65% from 26.25%. Adjusted the asymmetric corridor around the MPR from plus 100 to minus 300 to plus 500 to minus 100 basis points. Retain the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45% and merchant banks at 14%. Retain the liquidity ratio at 30%.
Well, let's now quickly jump in on this and see what the meaning we can make of this. Joining me now is Chijioke Ekechukwu, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Dignity Finance and Investment. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, it looks like an upward, and when Nigeria hasn't actually experienced any downward in the last couple of months. First, give us a sense of what is truly going on.
Before the MPC meeting that happened today, we economists thought it may be time to hold the monetary policy rate and all the monetary policy tools constant, knowing that we have constantly increased all the monetary policy tools. But it pleased the committee to increase it by such 50 basis points. But you could see that gradually, the last time it was increased by 150 basis points, and this time 50, meaning that they are also seeing what others are seeing, to the extent that we will not continue to stifle the system. The system has been so stifled that to have access to funds is getting so difficult. Even when you have the access, it comes to you at a very high interest rate. Banks continue to change interest rates as MPR continues to increase. But I don't expect that any bank will actually want to increase at the rate of an increase of 50 basis points, because they have been increasing. And these are some of the credit facilities have been existing already, and midway they will just write you a letter and they will just change the rates. What has happened in the last few months, or probably up to a year now, is the fact that having access to funds, because without access to funds of deposit money banks, there is no way businesses are going to grow. And this is the fact that people and businesses must go to banks and to have access to funds. But if the interest rate continues to increase because of the MPR, then we're not achieving much. Of course, the reason for the increase all the time is just to reduce money in circulation. Our argument, and part of my argument, is also the fact that there are a whole lot of things that are affecting inflation rate, not just money in circulation. Inflation rate today in Nigeria, if we're talking about some Western countries, probably all of them are going to be hovering around money circulation, to the extent that when you use monetary policy rates, you may control it. But in Nigeria, a lot of other factors. Today, we're talking about food inflation being the highest. Food inflation has nothing to do with monetary policy tools. And so we know where the food inflation, the rise in food inflation, we know where it's coming from.
You know, sorry to cut you there, because
Yes.
it's amazing that you're saying this has nothing to do with the food inflation, because the Nigerian out there thinks that whenever this is announced, it gets worse. You know, things get tighter for them. And you say this has nothing to
Yes.
do. Keep in mind that there are some big-time business people who are also in the food and commodity business.
That's right.
Who also have been able to take some form of credit from their bank. So help us make sense of how this does affect or otherwise not affect the everyday Nigerian.
Yes, it will obviously it will affect the food inflation, but not as much as it will affect other businesses, say manufacturing and other areas of business, because these are people who must go to the bank to collect money for and use for business. Why I said it wasn't the food inflation had a lot to do with other factors. We know a lot of farmers are no longer going to farms, and we know the ones that are there are not producing optimally for different reasons. And so we also know that the other costs, the cost of energy, cost of power, just going up all the time. Exchange rate is also as high as it is. So these are other factors different from the money circulation that we've been trying to control. So, but it's beginning to come closer now that the extent of increase is beginning to reduce. Of course, we also noted that inflation rate is beginning to ease off month on month, begin to ease off month on month. But of course, year on year, we're still increasing, and that is just what is worrisome. But we are hopeful that if other factors that are affecting inflation rate are dealt with, factors that I have just mentioned, if they are handled and dealt with, we are actually going to be using less of monetary policy to
I want you
inflation.
to close on that, on those factors. What can the government or the financial or investors, investment experts like yourself, do to actually rejig the sector?
Let me also note here that when interest rates are rising, you see that some kinds of investors take advantage of it. Portfolio investors are all over the place, bringing in their funds from all over the place into the country because they are taking advantage of the hike and the increase in interest rates. Today, the money market is doing very well because you can put your money, even the treasury bills are paying very good interest rates. And so portfolio investors are having a field day right now. But we have to, right now, businesses are just providing services for themselves. If we're talking about power, people are just going to other sources of energy, the ones that are not going to make them incur so much cost. If we're talking about insecurity, people are just providing their security right now. But government has a lot to do. Government really has a lot to do. I know that when we do deal a lot on the issues of insecurity, a lot of farmers are going to go back to farm, and we're going to start having increases in production of agricultural produce.
Well, I'm hoping that the government listens to that because we need them to go back to farm. I'd like to thank you for your time, Chijioke Ekechukwu. It's a delight having you on Newsline.